give me an alternative perspective on the great James Connolly.
One of the things that makes James Connolly so great is that he put forward the notion that if capitalists, if the bosses, as he called them at the time, and that was a language at the time, if the bosses lost track of what they were doing and treated workers just as numbers, that the whole thing would collapse.
Well, I don't buy any single part of that.
Why not?
Because I think that capitalism much more strongly represents the human condition than socialism. Because human beings are driven by greed, controlled by fear. We are not equal. The world is not fair. Wealth has to be created before it can be divvied up.
Connolly's line was, if you forget about what you exist for and try and get bigger and bigger profits, you'll eventually collapse. And that's what's happened, not just individual businesses, but it's what happened to the whole economy, Harry.
But out of the ashes, there will be a whole new world will arise.
Yeah, but who's paying? Who's been burnt in the fire? Who's been burnt in the fire? The ordinary workers have been burnt in the fire.
Because it's not a fair system.
The capitalists haven't been burnt in the fire.
It's never going to be fair.
But the thing that he brought to Ireland, and this is why I think he's the greatest Irishman, was that belief in an innate decency that stayed there. And you have it as well, by the way.
I agree with the innate decency.
Yeah.
But the fact remains that the strong should be allowed to create wealth. That wealth should then be distributed. And then, crucially, there should be a compassion at the bottom end of society that the weaker members do not fall below a certain accepted civilized standard. Everybody's entitled to a house. Everybody is entitled to full education services. Everybody is entitled to health. And after that, the best in society, the strongest and the brainiest, should be allowed to create wealth and distribute it by way of taxes.
You've just quoted the Proclamation.
Correct.
You have, written by James Connolly.
By 1915, Connolly's aspirations for a workers' republic were as far away as ever. At the funeral of O'Donovan Rossett, Pádraig Pearse said that an Ireland unfree shall never be at peace. James found himself agreeing with Pearse. He also found himself captured on moving pictures for the only time in his life. Connolly was fed up with the glorification of dead Fenians. He said it was time to concentrate on some living ones. James was moving towards the idea of revolution, armed revolution.
Croydon Park and Marina was where the Irish Citizen Army drilled with hurleys. At the same time, IRB man Michael Collins was drilling with wooden rifles in a gymnasium in London, and Erskine Childers was bringing arms into Howth for the Irish Volunteers. Many motivations, one endgame. The demands of the World War took the British government's focus away from Dublin. This offered the likes of Connolly, Pearse, Clark, Keant and others the opportunity to develop their plans. Michael Collins is regarded as the originator of guerrilla warfare in Ireland in the later War of Independence against the British. But James Connolly, the ex-British soldier, put an awful lot of thought into his own military tactics. He said, I'm going to fight the way I want, not the way the enemy wants. It will be a new way, one for which the soldiers have not been trained to deal with. Perhaps it was Connolly who inspired Collins. Connolly was straining at the leash for revolution. In January 1916, he was kidnapped by those in the secret Irish Republican Brotherhood who wanted to talk him out of launching any attack too soon. They wanted him to wait. They all eventually agreed on an Easter rebellion. On the Monday morning, Pearse may have been political leader, but James Connolly was the military leader, the commander of all the armed forces. And he told his men, there's no citizen army now or volunteer force. We are all part of the Irish Republican Army. And as he got to the steps of Liberty Hall, he turned to his good friend William O'Brien and said, we are all going to be slaughtered. A Imagine that long march from Liberty Hall, up Lower Abbey Street, onto Sackville Street. It's Bank Holiday Monday. This moment is the crux of the story. But for most Irish people, this is the opening chapter in the story of James Connolly's greatness and legacy. But as we have seen, it was actually the final chapter. He'd had 48 years of a full life, born into poverty, eking out an entire lifetime at the heart of the working class. Now he was prepared to lay down his life for the Irish people, a workers' republic free from economic slavery. The attack signal was to be the Angelus bell at midday. On the first peal, the great James Connolly shouted, "Left turn, the GPO, charge!"